Stone closes over sound in a way the open world never does. A few steps from the entrance, daylight begins to dissolve. Color drains first. Distance disappears next. Then time itself seems to loosen, because almost nothing here marks the passing of a day. The air is cool, wet, and still. Water moves somewhere out of sight. Beneath the floor, within cracks too narrow for a hand, lives a community so altered by darkness that it can seem almost unreal. Antennae stretch like wires. Legs become thin and improbably long. Eyes shrink, cloud, or vanish. Bodies fade to white, amber, or translucent pale. Today, we're diving into why cave insects look so strange. And the deeper we go, the clearer it becomes that these animals are not grotesque accidents of nature. They are records of an extreme negotiation between life and scarcity, between ancient anatomy and a world that no longer rewards the senses and structures life once depended on. The first reason cave insects look so unusual is simple, and merciless caves are poor. In deep cave zones there is no sunlight, and without sunlight there is almost no photosynthesis. The usual engine of terrestrial life shuts down. What remains is an economy of leftovers. Nutrients arrive only when water washes in organic debris, when roots pierce through ceilings, when animals visit from the surface and leave droppings, eggs, or their bodies behind. This means cave life is not shaped by abundance, but by interruption. Food comes in pulses. It is uncertain, scattered, and often meager. In such places, evolution does not reward extravagance. It trims, it repurposes. It favors bodies that can function on less, senses that work without light, and behaviors that waste as little energy as possible. Strange anatomy begins here, not as decoration, but as arithmetic. Every pigment molecule, every wing beat, every eye lens must justify its cost. In the underground, many cannot. Not every insect found in a cave is truly of the cave. Some shelter there for part of their lives and return outside to feed. Others stay permanently and complete their entire life cycle in darkness. Those permanent residents, the true cave specialists, are the ones that carry the most dramatic signatures of subterranean evolution. Their existence changed science itself. In 1831, in the caves of the Dinaric Karst, naturalists encountered a beetle that helped overturn the old idea of caves as barren voids or places reserved for myth. That insect was Leptodirus hawkenwati, the narrow-necked cave beetle, later recognized as the first species ever described from a subterranean habitat. It is still one of the most iconic cave insects in the world. Its body looks reassembled by underground rules. A narrow pronotum like a neck, elongated legs and antennae, and a swollen hind body. It does not resemble the compact, armored efficiency many people associate with beetles on the surface. It looks stretched, softened, specialized, and that appearance marks a turning point. Caves are not empty. They are evolutionary workshops. One of the most conspicuous features of cave insects is what they no longer have. Eyes diminish. Pigment fades. Wings are often reduced. At first glance, this seems like decay, as if life underground is merely the story of subtraction. But the biology is more complicated. Researchers studying cave adaptation describe at least two broad forces behind these losses. Some traits may erode because the cave no longer preserves them through natural selection. In total darkness, mutations that impair vision may simply accumulate. Yet other losses may be actively favored because they reduce cost or are tied, through developmental trade-offs, to the strengthening of more useful traits. In other words, blindness underground is not necessarily failure. It can be part of a rebalancing. Pigment also becomes less urgent where camouflage, mate choice, and protection from sunlight matter differently or not at all. Across many cave lineages, unrelated animals repeatedly evolve the same suite of changes: reduced or absent eyes, pallor, longer appendages, and enhanced non-visual sensing. Scientists call this troglomorphism. It is one of evolution's clearest signs that very different organisms, trapped by the same conditions, can be pushed toward eerily similar solutions. If sight becomes less useful, other ways of knowing the world must expand. This is where cave insects begin to look almost exaggerated. Antennae lengthen. Legs become finer and more extended. Sensory hairs proliferate. In deep darkness, shape itself turns into a tool for perception. The body reaches outward, because the environment can no longer be grasped at a distance through vision. Touch and chemistry take over. A wall, a current of air, a trace of food, the presence of another animal, the vibration of movement across stone or root. These become the real geography of underground life. In cave-adapted arthropods, researchers have documented increased appendage length and elaboration of non-visual sensory systems, including chemosensory structures. Even the logic of movement shifts. Surface insects can rush, leap, or fly through visually legible space. Cave insects often probe. They test. They map by contact. What seems uncanny to us is, for them, precision. The strange outline is a living sensor array, extended into an environment where the next few millimeters may matter more than the far horizon ever did. Among the most striking examples are cave tree-sheen beetles. Ground beetles that in their most specialized forms have been reshaped almost beyond recognition. Studies of these beetles show a gradual progression toward extreme cave anatomy, from eyeless forms to transitional body plans, and then to the highly specialized Aphanopsian types. As specialization deepens, the body becomes more slender, the appendages more elongated, the wings disappear, and the eyes are entirely lost. Some wander along walls and ceilings in complete darkness, where a narrow body and reaching limbs may help them negotiate stone surfaces and locate sparse prey. Researchers even suggest that elongation of the head and pronotum may increase flexibility, a possible advantage when searching for food in a habitat where meals are unpredictable and often hidden. Seen under light, these beetles can appear delicate, almost overdrawn, as though their anatomy has been pulled toward a vanishing point. But what is really visible is not excess. It is specialization under extreme constraint, the refinement of a predator for a world where detection is difficult, flight is wasteful, and every encounter matters. Yet caves do not shape only hunters in stone chambers. They also produce remarkable insect lives around the narrow pathways by which energy enters the dark. In many cave systems, bats are one of the great suppliers of that energy, carrying nutrients from the surface and leaving behind guano that feeds detritivores and through them, predators. Other visitors do something similar on a smaller scale. Cave crickets, for example, often move between the surface and underground spaces, helping connect two ecosystems that would otherwise be more isolated from one another. The cave food web can depend on such commuters. Their droppings, eggs, and carcasses become part of the budget of the underground. This matters because the bodies of permanent cave insects are built in the shadow of that budget. In food-poor habitats, many cave invertebrates evolve slow metabolisms and the ability to endure long intervals without eating. They live on thin margins. They often develop slowly, move efficiently, and persist where a faster, more energetically demanding body plan would simply fail. The weirdness, then, is inseparable from hunger. Cave insects look the way they do because the underground does not tolerate waste. Natural History Museum National Park Service, that same economy, helps explain why wings so often shrink or disappear in cave insects. Flight is one of the most powerful innovations in insect history, but it is also expensive. Wings require space, musculature, developmental investment, and a world where fast movement through open air is worth the cost. In a cave where passages are cramped, surfaces irregular, and darkness complete, wings may offer less advantage than they do above ground. Several cave-adapted insects, including Hawaiian cave planthoppers, show reduced wings alongside loss of eyes and pigmentation. The pattern suggests something deeper than simple disuse. Underground, a compact or crawling existence can be more reliable than flight, especially when food is sparse and the risk of collision is constant. Structures that help an insect leave the ground and cover distance in the open may become liabilities in a maze of rock. Evolution does not care that wings once built an empire for insects across the planet. In caves, it asks a narrower question: do they still pay for themselves here? Often, the answer is no. On the youngest volcanic islands of Hawaii, this logic plays out in a form even more revealing, because the caves themselves are young. Lava flows cool and harden on the surface, while preserving air-filled tubes and voids beneath. Through the ceilings of these dark passageways descend the living roots of Metrosideros polymorpha, the yohia tree, sustaining food webs in a place with no sunlight of its own. Here lives the blind cave planthopper Olearus polyphemus, an insect that seems assembled from cave principles with astonishing clarity. It shows extreme reduction of eyes, wings, and pigmentation. It feeds on roots, and because it is blind, it relies on low-frequency substrate-borne vibrations transmitted through those roots as its only means of communication. Courtship does not travel through light or bright display. It travels through plant tissue in darkness. This is not simply an insect losing things. It is an insect changing languages. The medium of life shifts from vision to vibration, from foliage to stone ceiling roots, from open daylight to subterranean networks. And because different lava tube systems become isolated from one another, these planthoppers offer a natural experiment in how quickly such transformations can emerge. The Hawaiian story is especially powerful because it reveals that cave strangeness does not always require immense spans of time. The planthopper complex has been described as showing one of the highest estimated speciation rates among animals, suggesting that under the right conditions, subterranean divergence can proceed with startling speed. This matters because it challenges an older image of cave evolution, as something purely slow, passive, and erosive. In reality, caves can generate change rapidly when populations are fragmented, resources are patchy, and communication systems become tied to local conditions. A lineage can split, courtship signals can drift or adapt, morphology can follow. Blindness and pallor may be only the visible front edge of a deeper reorganization involving behavior, reproduction, and sensory biology. When separate cave lineages repeatedly arrive at similar outcomes, the lesson is not that caves produce monsters, but that severe environments can make evolution eerily predictable. Independent insects on different islands or in distant caste systems begin to resemble one another because darkness keeps asking the same questions. Even then, there is no single cave insect blueprint. Some subterranean insects are not pale and fragile at all, but specialists in cold, marginal cave systems where ice itself becomes part of the habitat. National Park Service accounts describe ice bugs, members of the order Leptodirus, living in caves made of ice. Elsewhere, cave diplurans move with elongated bodies and tail-like cerci that help them feel through darkness. These examples matter because they remind us that caves are not one environment, but many limestone chambers, lava tubes, fault ice caves, flooded systems, sulfurous voids. The strange appearance of underground insects is therefore always local as well as general. The broad rules remain low light, limited food, stable conditions, isolation, but each cave system imposes its own version of those rules. One lineage may become a slow, tactile predator on stone walls. Another becomes a root-feeding communicator of vibrations. Another survives near freezing temperatures, where few insects can function at all. The weirdness changes shape, because the underground has many dialects. What makes these animals so compelling is that their bodies force us to rethink what adaptation looks like. We are accustomed to evolution adding power, bigger eyes, brighter colors, stronger wings, faster reflexes. Cave insects show the opposite can also be true. Success may come from narrowing rather than expanding, from giving up a once crucial sense, from slowing a metabolism, from extending a single antenna into a darkness where that one structure matters more than a pair of eyes ever could. In this sense, cave insects do not represent life pushed downward into failure. They represent life edited to fit a harder sentence. Every odd proportion carries an ecological meaning. Every missing trait raises the same deep evolutionary question, not why was it lost, but why was it no longer worth keeping? The answer is never abstract. It lies in stone humidity, in the timing of nutrient pulses, in the geometry of cracks, in the silence between encounters. And still, for all that science has uncovered, the underground remains one of the least fully known frontiers of animal life. National Park Service cave biologists note that many cave communities remain poorly studied, and new species continue to be documented. Human presence can alter these systems in ways that seem minor from above electric light. New entrances, lint, footsteps, shifting airflow. Yet caves are defined by constancy, and constancy is fragile. Even in places we have explored, the mechanisms behind eye loss, pigment reduction, sensory expansion, and metabolic slowing are not fully resolved. Researchers still debate the balance between drift and selection, between passive regression and active advantage. and between traits shaped directly by darkness and those pulled along by deeper developmental trade-offs. So the final impression these insects leave is not certainty, but humility. In the deep cave, evolution is visible, but not simplified. It is still intricate, contingent, and partly hidden. The animals look strange, because they have been written by a world we only briefly visit. And even now, standing with our lights in the dark, we are reading only fragments of the text.